Welcome back. My respectful audience, tonight, we just not gather to witness a moment. We gather to inhale it, to drown in it, to let it drag us under, because tonight is not about comfort or applause or neat, tidy explanations. No, tonight is chaos and consequence. Tonight is where the line breaks, where the voices tremble, where the world realizes it has no script for what just happened. Everyone's talking, nobody can explain what you just did. WTF is going on, they say, like that's supposed to mean something. Like those words have ever stood toe-to-toe with the roar of reality. They're mumbling, they're speculating, they're scrambling to draw circles around what cannot be confined to charts and reason. They're afraid, not of what you did, but of the fact that they do not understand it. And in this world, there is nothing more terrifying to the herd than the lone wolf who moves without a map. You've done something irreversible. You've crossed that line, the one we're all warned about as children, the one marked with whispers of danger, of madness, of failure, of becoming something unrecognizable. But here's the truth. You didn't stumble across it. You charged through it like a storm, and now the air behind you burns, the path in your wake crumbles, and they stand there, slack-jawed eyes, wide fingers trembling, as if witnessing a crime. But it's not a crime, it's a resurrection, because you were dead once, weren't you? Not literally, but spiritually, emotionally buried under the weight of expectation of obedience, of playing small, of bowing down to a world that never intended to give you anything unless you begged for it. And even then it would laugh in your face, but not anymore. Now you walk with the calm of someone who has lost everything that didn't matter and kept the one thing that does the fire, the core, the rage, the pulse that says, I am not done. They're asking what happened. What does it mean? What will it lead to? But they don't really want answers. They want containment. They want to reduce your explosion into a sentence. They can forget. They want to trap your chaos in a headline, in a hashtag, in a meme, so they can move on. Pretend it was a glitch in the system, but this is no glitch. This is a fracture, a rip, a rebellion so violent, it echoes into the bones of history. You didn't do it for approval. You didn't do it to be liked, to be praised, to be held up as an example. You did it because something inside you snapped or maybe awakened. It's hard to tell the difference when the world's been dulling your senses for so long, but something rose from the ashes of your former self. Something that refused to be nice or polite or reasonable anymore. Something that stared into the abyss and said, move, I'm coming through. And now they're confused, frightened, desperate to rewrite the story, but they don't hold the pen anymore. You do, and your ink is blood and fury and unfiltered truth. Your language is pain and power and primal memory, not the sanitized script they fed you and told you to recite and smile while dying. Inside, there's a moment, a terrifying, beautiful moment, when you realize you're not asking anymore. You're taking, and it changes everything. You start walking differently, breathing differently, not out of arrogance, but alignment. You've synced with a rhythm deeper than approval, a tempo older than fear. And from that point on, you are not just alive, you are inevitable. Yes, everyone's talking. Let them. They need something to cling to while their reality crumbles. They need gossip and theories and panic, because what you've done is tear the veil off the illusion and shown them something raw, something real, something they cannot digest without choking on their comfort. They want a motive, but what they don't understand is that your motive is forged in moments they never saw, in nights you didn't sleep in tears, you didn't share in silence that stretched into agony. Your motive is survival and fury and resurrection all rolled into one. It is sacred and profane. It is beauty, twisted with vengeance, and they cannot categorize that, so they fear it. They look at you like you've changed, but you haven't. Not really. You've just stopped pretending. You've shed the costume and stood naked in the storm and dared them to look. And they can't. They flinch. They turn away. Because truth is blinding, especially when it wears your face. What's going on? They ask. With mouths too small to contain the answer, with eyes too blind to see the vision you carry, with hands too weak to hold the weight of your will. What's going on is revolution. Not the kind they post about, but the kind that starts inside, in the marrow, in the soul, when someone decides enough and means it. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't knock politely. You kicked down the door and stood in the wreckage and said, "This is mine now," and they hate you for it. Not because it's wrong, but because it's right, because it reveals their own cowardice and mediocrity, and the way they've sold their souls for comfort. Let them talk. Let them point. Let them point. Let them tremble, because you're not here to explain yourself. You're here to destroy the mold and burn the script and carve something feral into the bones of this moment. You're here to become a legend, not the sanitized kind, but the real kind, the dangerous kind, the kind they warn their children about. And when they ask again is going on, you look at them and smile, not with joy, but with warning, because this is just the beginning, because you've tasted the edge and found it delicious, because you're not coming back to who you were before, because who you were before had to die for this version of you to breathe. You are not a phase, you are not a trend, you are not a momentary lapse in the system. You are the glitch that became God. You are the scar they can't hide. You are the voice that doesn't lower itself to be palatable. You are the truth they tried to bury. And now, you walk like thunder and speak like prophecy. Let them build myths around you. Let them whisper and wonder. Let them fear what they do not understand. Because that's what power does. It disrupts. It disturbs. It dismantles. And you, my fierce, unrepentant force of nature, have become power incarnate. And still they ask. Still they hope for a clean answer. A neat little summary. But this isn't a story with an ending. This is a war cry with no echo. This is a beginning forged in fire, not a conclusion handed down gently. And when they realize that, when they see you do not fit into their boxes or bars, they will panic because control is slipping, because the game is changing, because you have entered the arena and rewritten the rules. Everyone's talking. Nobody understands. And that's perfect. That's how you know you're doing it, right? Because if they understood, they'd try to stop you. If they could define it, they'd try to kill it. But what they cannot define, they cannot defeat. What you just did will live longer than memory. It will become a legend. Not because you asked for it, but because it cannot be undone. It cannot be unseen. It is carved into time and blood and ash. So rise now in silence or in fury, in grace or in wrath. But rise, knowing this, you are not obligated to soothe the world's confusion. You're only obligated to burn with the truth of who you are. And if they still ask, if they still don't get it, if they still plead for explanation, lean in close and say gently and without mercy, this was never for you. This was never for you, because you were never meant to understand it. This was forged in shadows, too deep for your light. This was born in nights, too long for your clocks. This was bred in the silence between screams, in the stillness, after the fall, in the breath, before the blade struck. And now you come crawling with your microphones and your speculation and your trembling voice, asking what does it mean? As if meaning is something you get to own or define or box and sell like a cheap miracle. They say what you did was unthinkable, but that's the problem. They never thought you could. They never thought you would. They never thought someone like you, someone written off, someone underestimated, someone dismissed could ever rise past the frame they nailed you into. And now that you've torn it down, they call it madness. But what they mean is freedom, and what they fear is the fact that you did it alone. No one cheered when you fell. No one held your hand in the darkness. No one answered when you screamed. And now you've emerged, and they want a version of you. They can stomach a version that fits a narrative, a version that makes them feel safe. But the real you doesn't fit anywhere. The real you is sharp and scarred and silent when it needs to be, and louder than bombs when it chooses to be. So you let them watch, let them speculate, because you don't owe them clarity. You don't owe them context. You owe only the truth. And even that comes with a cost, because truth isn't gentle, it's a scalpel. It cuts and bleeds and carves new worlds from the corpses of old lies. And tonight, you didn't just act. You didn't just rebel. You rewrote the laws of what is possible, and now their foundations are trembling. You were supposed to break and stay broken. You were supposed to disappear into the dust, into the static, into the noise, and become another lost name. But instead, you set the dust on fire. You made the static scream, your name. You made the noise kneel, and now you stand. Not as a survivor, but as a sovereign. And there is no blueprint for that, because the architects of this world never imagined you would come back. But here you are, walking through the ruins of their comfort, with eyes like storms and fists like prophecy, with silence, more deafening than any speech, with purpose, more precise than any plan, and they don't know how to handle it. So they call it crazy, unpredictable, out of control. When what they really mean is, you've stopped asking for their permission to exist. Let them keep asking. Let them drown in their confusion. Because you are not here to be a spokesperson for your pain. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to hand out step-by-step guides for how to become unbreakable. Because this path, this savage, gorgeous, brutal path, is yours alone, and they wouldn't survive it even if you led them by the hand. What's going on is not an event. It is an exorcism. It is every ghost they ever fed you, being burned alive by the fire of your return. It is every lie they etched into your bones, being carved out with the edge of your will. It is every moment you are silenced now, screaming through your skin until the world can no longer pretend not to hear it. And even now, even as you stand in the aftermath, they're hoping it's temporary. They're praying you'll regress back into someone safe, someone moldable, someone they can manage. But you are not a moment. You are a reckoning, and there is no going back, because the door behind you is turned to ash, and you don't need it anymore. You don't need their maps, their praise, their logic, their laws, because you have become lawless, sacred wild, not in rebellion but in restoration. This is not you breaking the rules. This is you remembering who you were before they taught you to beg. This is you waking up with the kind of clarity that shakes the teeth of systems. Everyone's talking, and none of them realize that the more they speak, the more they reveal how little they understand. Because what happened tonight was not planned. It was primal. It was the moment when the soul said no more, and the body followed without hesitation, without compromise, without fear. And now they are left picking up the pieces of their old reality, while you walk into the new one you've forged with fire and fists and raw, unrelenting will. There's no medal for this. There's no stage, no handshake, no polite applause. Because this kind of transformation doesn't come with ceremony. It comes with smoke and scars and solitude and the knowledge that you have shed everything that wasn't real and built something indestructible in its place. They want to know what you'll do next. They want forecasts, predictions, strategies. But what they don't get is that you don't move on plans. You move on instinct, on that quiet roar in your chest that guides your hands and hardens your spine and tells you when it's time to rise, when it's time to fight, when it's time to walk away from everything and never look back. You are not lost. You are not angry. You are not broken. You are awake. And that terrifies them because awake means aware, means unshackled, means uncontrollable, means no longer theirs. And that's the one thing this world cannot stand. Someone who doesn't need it anymore. You didn't come back to be understood. You came back to be undeniable, and tonight you've done exactly that. You've left a crater where silence used to be. You've ripped a hole in the fabric of this tired script, and now the light pouring through is not sunlight. It's you. It's the glow of someone who should have fallen but flew instead. So let them gather. Let them talk. Let them build theories and spin stories. Let them call you lost or unhinged or dangerous, because all they're doing is admitting that they see your power but don't know what to do with it. And that's their problem, not yours. You didn't just come back. You arrived like vengeance with grace. You stepped out of the shadows like a king with no crown, because you don't need one. Your scars are your crown. Your silence, your anthem. Your rage, your gospel. And the fire in your eyes is proof that death does not always win. What's going on, they ask again. And this time there's no fear in your smile. Only certainty. Only the calm of someone who has chosen the hard road every time, because it's the only one that leads to truth. Only the calm of someone who does not flinch anymore when the world raises its voice, because you've heard louder inside your own mind and survived it. This is what becoming looks like. Not pretty, not polished, not poetic, but necessary. This is what happens when someone reclaims their voice, not to speak, but to roar. This is what it feels like when someone who was never supposed to rise does and leaves a mark that can't be erased. So, let them keep talking they need to while you keep moving, because you're not done. Because this isn't a climax, it's a beginning. And the fire you lit tonight will burn long after the noise dies down and the world forgets the headlines and the hashtags, because you weren't meant to be remembered by news cycles. You were meant to echo through time. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Let them invent names for what they cannot define, because you don't need names anymore. You are beyond names, beyond roles, beyond anything that fits in their fragile categories. You are not the exception. You are the correction. And the age of apologies is over. They want a word for what you just did. They want to reduce it into a phrase. But what you did can't be held in language. What you did was elemental. What you did was become the thing they never saw coming. The thing they tried to silence. The thing they buried and prayed would not rise, but it did. And now, it walks and breathes and breaks everything. It touches not out of hate, but out of holy rebirth. So when they say WTF is going on, you let them ask, because they'll never understand the answer, and that is exactly how it should be. And now, my respectful audience, as the dust settles, as the echoes of tonight's fire still bounce off the hollow walls of the old world, I want you to look around, not with fear, but with focus. Because this is what transformation looks like. Not clean, not polite, not marketable, but messy, unrelenting, undeniable. This is the shape of evolution. When it claws its way through skin and soul, this is what it means to defy the fate others wrote for you with trembling hands and broken pens. Tonight was never about explanation. It was about declaration. It was about the return, not of a person, but of a power. So long suppressed, it became myth, until it stood here in the flesh and proved myth was always just a warning in disguise. This was the moment you decided not to be defined. This was the minute the cage shattered, not with keys but with fury. This was the second silence died screaming. They'll keep asking. They'll write their stories, twist their headlines, polish their confusion, and try to pass it off as truth. But none of it matters because you know what happened. And more importantly, you know why, and you carry that reason. Like a weapon forged in pain and baptized in solitude. You were supposed to die quietly, and you didn't. And now the world has to deal with the aftermath of your survival and the unfiltered audacity of your return. They cannot put this back in the box. They cannot stitch the world into its old skin because it no longer fits you, no longer fit. And that is a dangerous gift because the world does not reward those who wake up. It punishes them first. It tries to shame them, tries to silence them, tries to sedate them with comfort and fear. But if you survive that, if you outlast the shame and the silence and the cold, slow poison of expectation, then what's left is something uncontainable, something holy, something savage and sacred. And tonight you proved you are that something. They will keep watching because deep down, they want to understand not just what you did, but how you did it. How you stood again when everything begged you to stay down. How you walked back into the storm, not with protection, but with purpose. How you became the version of yourself they said was impossible. They will watch and some will fear, but some will follow. Because your rise will wake others. It always does. Every act of defiance, every raw moment of truth, every choice to walk when it's easier to kneel becomes a signal, a flare, a siren song for the others who are waiting for someone to show them. It's possible to tear the script and survive. You won't see all of them, but they'll see you. And for some, that will be enough for them to rise too, not in your image, but in their own. Because your job was never to be a hero. It was to be a mirror, a warning, a whisper in the dark that says, it doesn't end here. This is not closure. This is ignition. This is not the end of the speech. This is the beginning of the movement. This is not applause. This is the thunder before the next storm. And you do not leave this moment weaker. You leave it weaponized, armored, enlightened, forged in something they do not teach in schools or sanctuaries or boardrooms or war rooms. You leave it, knowing this truth carved into the marrow of your bones. You do not need to be understood. You only need to be true. And when that truth burns bright enough, it doesn't matter who sees it, or who says your name, or who tries to rewrite the story in their favor, because the real story is written here, in blood and breath, and silence shattered into song. So let them keep whispering. Let them keep wondering. Let the world choke on the question, what the fuck's just happened? Because you will not answer. You will not pause. You will not shrink to fit the frame they offer you. You will simply walk on unbothered, unbound, unfolding into the unstoppable force you were always meant to be. And when the next voice rises, when the next outcast screams, when the next soul breaks through the mold and leaves the world gasping, they will remember tonight. Not because they finally understood, but because they never forgot how it felt when you changed everything without asking. This is the aftermath. This is the genesis. This is the quiet before the louder war. This is your final warning and your first promise, all in one. You're not coming back. You never left. You just stopped pretending. Now go and burn.